Today's presenter is Alexandra. She's volunteered to present today's chapter, and in a moment we'll just pass over to you, Alexandra. So when you're ready, just share your screen and you can start, and you've got about 10 to 15 minutes maximum, if that's okay, and the rest of the time will be for discussion. Okay.
So about myself, my name is Alexandra. I live in London in the UK. I'm from Moldova. Unfortunately, I grew up in a bubble. I didn't know exactly what was happening outside until I did my master's in public health and emergencies in Brussels, and I met people from around the world, and I realized about many things, not only Palestine. But yeah, I became more aware about this issue since October. And since then, I started to actually educate myself, mostly based on books, documentaries, rather than media, because it was both. There was like an amount of propaganda that needed to be filtered, but also it was really hard to digest the media. So today I'll present chapter 5. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And chapter 5 is from the book 10 Myths About Israel, is the Palestinians voluntarily left their homeland in 1948. Well, this chapter addresses the widely propagated claim that Palestinians willingly left their home during the 1948 Arab-Israel War, which led to the establishment of the State of Israel. Papet challenges this narrative, presenting evidence to argue that the exodus of Palestinians was neither voluntarily nor incidental, but the result of a deliberate and systematic campaign. There are two questions examined in this chapter. Was there a will to expel the Palestinians? And on the eve of 1948 war, were the Palestinians called upon to voluntarily leave their homes? Historical evidence is Papet critically examines historical records, including military orders, government documents, and personal testimonies, to demonstrate that the departure of Palestinians was not voluntary. He highlighted how these records revealed a planned and systematic expulsion that are stated by the Zionist forces. And one of the Zionist intellectual and leader was Berl Katznelson, a Lithuanian-born Israeli labor Zionist, who mentioned that the transfer to inside of Palestine would mean the area of Shechem, Nablus. I believe that their future lies in Syria and Iraq. Please note that he died in 1944. That was before the Nakba, official Nakba. Ben Gurion, Polish-born Israeli politician, Zionist leader, and Prime Minister of Israel, mentioned that with compulsory transfer, we would have a vast area for settlement. I don't support compulsory transfer. I don't see anything. I support compulsory transfer. I don't see anything immoral in it. We have a few more statements mentioned in the book made by these two leaders, and I quoted 6 statements. I will not read all of them, but the word transfer in these 6 statements has been mentioned for 12 times only here. Another reference, historical reference Papet is mentioning, is Plan Dalet, or Plan D, which was signed on 10th of March 1948, which clearly stated that mounting operations against enemy population centers located inside or near our defensive system in order to prevent them from being used as bases by an active armed force. These operations can be divided into the following categories: destruction of villages, especially those population centers which are difficult to control continuously, and mounting search and control operations according to the following guidelines: encirclement of the village and conducting a search inside it. In the event of the resistance, the armed force must be destroyed and the population must be expelled outside the borders of the state. So that was Plan D. Now, there were massacres and psychological warfare on Palestinian people, carried on Palestinian people. Papet details several instances of massacres and acts of violence, such as the infamous Deir Yassin Massacre, which were used to instill fear and prompt Palestinians to flee. He argues that these acts were part of a broader strategy to clear the land of its Arab population. So we come to the second question. On the eve of 1948 war, were the Palestinians called upon to voluntarily leave their homes, called upon by their leaders as Israel states? The answer is no from the book. Initially, Israeli government entrusted the junior researcher Roni Gabay with the task to conduct research that would prove the narrative. With his permit to access classified documents, he reached the conclusion that expulsion, fear, and intimidation were the major causes of the Palestinian exodus. I tried to find more information on Roni Gabay online. There is no records on him. After he had access to the classified documents, they were declassified and classified again. So we know that here we have a picture of residents of Al-Ramla being ethnically cleansed on the orders from Rabin 1948. For the sake of time, I didn't quote him, but I found a quote when he mentioned about the Israeli propaganda and how important it was for the Israel reputation on the international stage. According to the Israeli historian Benny Morris, whatever the reasoning and attitude of the Arab states leaders, I have found no contemporary evidence to show that either the leaders of the Arab states or the Mufti Haj Amin al-Husseini ordered or directly encouraged the mass exodus during April 1948. It might be worth noting that for decades, the policy of the Palestinian Arab leaders had been to hold fast to the soil of Palestine and to resist the eviction and displacement of Arab communities. So we clearly see the role of propaganda. The chapter examines the role of propaganda in shaping the public response. We have another pictures with Israelis fleeing their home. This is an original letter sent by the Arab Higher Committee to the Egyptian government, urging it to refuse entry for refugees unless in emergency situations. And similar letters were sent to governments of adjacent Arab countries. We also have an order from Abdul Rahman Azam Pasha, Secretary General of the Arab League, and King Abdullah. Both issued public calls to the Arabs not to leave their home. The commander of the Arab Liberation Army was given instruction to stop the flight by force and to requisition transport for this purpose. This was quoted by another Israeli intellectual, Simcha Flapan. Here is records of two telegrams which clearly mention the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. First is the cleansing action on land, and then the masses of refugees in its neighborhood banished. The telegram dated 1948. So another quote that I found important to mention, it was Glub Pasha, the British officer of the Jordanian army during the 1948 war, said, "The story with Jewish publicity at first persuaded the world to accept that the Palestinian Arab refugees left voluntarily. It's not true. Voluntary immigrants do not leave their homes with only the clothes they stand in. People who decided to leave house do not do in such a hurry that they lose other members of the family, husband losing sight of his wife, or parents of their children. The fact is that the majority left in panic flight to escape massacre. They were in fact helped on their way by the occasional massacres, not of very many at the time, but just enough to keep them running." So the chapter concludes with the chapter concludes by refuting the myth of voluntary departure, emphasizing the importance of recognizing the forced nature of the Palestinian exodus. Papé argues that acknowledging this historical reality is crucial for any meaningful dialogue and resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Also, Papé discusses the long-term impact of the 1948 exodus on Palestinian society, including the creation of a massive refugee population and the enduring sense of loss and displacement that continues to affect Palestinian identity and politics. And as we know from recent media, the Nakba did not start or end in 1948. It started before the 19th century, and it continues until today. And all things are subject to interpretation. Whichever interpretation prevails at a given time is a function of power and not truth. Friedrich Nietzsche. That's it.
Thank you, Alexandra. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we open it for everybody to comment?
No, from my own perspective, it was like another piece of information to add to the puzzle. I appreciate because the narrative is. I appreciate the evidence by quotes, pictures, documents that were mentioned in the book, and other sources that I searched, and I think that they speak for themselves.
Yeah, they do. So everybody, I found this chapter especially gruesome, actually. I grew up, obviously, in Israel, looking at all these people, that the names of whom you've heard, Berl Katzenelson, obviously Ben Gurion, and all these lot, and we were supposed to think of them as heroes. One of the things, as a mental health professional, I could not overlook the psychopathy. And that's probably, Elon stays away from psychology, I know that, but if you can talk with such cynicism, and there are quotes from everybody that, oh, well, they need to be removed, they need to be transferred, we just need to move them elsewhere. That kind of talk requires some degree of psychopathy. It requires not feeling anything about people who you're thinking, oh, we'll just remove them, that's it. So I could see that. I don't know if a particular person is a psychopath, but there's definitely an element of psychopathy in it. Psychopathy means you can't feel empathy to people and you don't feel normal feelings in response to normal. If you hear about somebody's story and it's sad, then if a normal person would feel sad, but a psychopath will feel nothing. The part of the brain that's supposed to have feelings doesn't. And this is what comes across to me so much. So I found the whole thing incredibly sinister, actually. The fact that we even need to talk about this, that Elon even needs to talk about this in his book, is disgusting, actually. Well, if we're finishing, then put your microphones on and you can say goodbye. And
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.